Usually when we talk about a major life catastrophe, we tend to picture something out of a summer blockbuster.
Right, something super dramatic.
Yeah, exactly. Like something loud, sudden, and just completely undeniable.
Oh, for sure.
So picture this. You are paddling out on your surfboard on a beautiful, clear morning in Hawaii.
Sounds pretty ideal.
Right. The water is calm, the sun is shining, and then, entirely without warning, you are attacked by a 14-foot tiger shark.
Which is, I mean, it's the ultimate extreme scenario.
It really is.
The stakes are immediate. It's literal life and death. And the physical trauma is just, well, it's entirely visible to everyone around you.
Yeah, there is absolutely no ambiguity about the severity of what just happened.
Exactly.
But then, you step into the world of everyday human psychology, and specifically the world of a teenager navigating the high-pressure environment of a boarding school.
Which honestly can feel like its own kind of survival situation.
Totally. And if you take that teenager and put them in an fMRI scanner right after, like a massive social rejection or a catastrophic academic failure,
Yeah.
that level of catastrophic shock actually doesn't look so different from the shark attack in the brain.
It really doesn't. I mean, the external triggers couldn't be more different, obviously.
Sure.
But the internal emotional machinery, the part of you attempting to process the sudden, derailment of your reality,
Yeah.
that machinery is virtually identical. At the level of the amygdala, a threat is a threat.
Wow. Which brings us to your mission for today's deep dive.
Yes.
We are looking at the mechanics of resilience.
Yeah.
How do you actually put yourself back together after life knocks you completely off your board?
It's such an important question for all of us.
It is. And to figure this out, we are unpacking a really fascinating document today. It's titled, and I'm reading this exactly, What a Boarder Can Learn from Bethany Hamilton.pdf.
It's a great piece.
It really is.
Yeah.
It takes the survival and recovery story of professional surfer Bethany Hamilton, who lost her left arm in that shark attack as a teenager.
Right.
And it maps her psychological journey directly onto the daily struggles of a student.
And it serves as just a brilliant magnifying glass because by looking at an extreme, highly visible physical recovery, we can isolate the exact mechanisms needed for an invisible psychological recovery.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because on the surface, comparing a shark attack to, say, getting a bad grade on a math test,
Or feeling homesick.
yeah, or feeling homesick, it sounds almost absurd. I mean, it borders on insulting to the shark attack survivor, right?
It does, yeah, until you look at the neurobiology of adolescent development.
Okay, how so?
Well, we tend to dismiss teenage struggles as melodrama.
Constantly.
Right. But we have to remember that before the prefrontal cortex fully matures, a teenager's peer group is their actual survival tribe.
Wait, like biologically?
Biologically, in our evolutionary history, being socially ostracized from the tribe meant you were going to starve or get eaten by a predator.
Wow, okay.
So when a boarding school student experiences a painful falling out with their core group of friends, their brain isn't just registering sadness.
What's it doing?
It is sounding a literal survival alarm. Social survival is biological survival in that stage of development.
Oh, wow. So the panic is incredibly real.
Absolutely.
To that student, their entire social or academic ecosystem is basically bleeding out.
Yes.
Which makes the foundational lesson of Bethany Hamilton's story so crucial, right? Adversity doesn't have to define your future.
That's the core of it.
Because she didn't just survive the attack, she completely rebuilt her life and returned to competitive surfing.
She did, but, and this is the tricky part, when you are the one in the water or you're the student staring at the failing grade, how do you actually internalize that?
Yeah, because in the moment, it feels like the end of the world.
Exactly. The psychological trap is that the failure feels permanent.
Why is that? Why do our brains do that to us?
That is the negativity bias in full effect. Our brains evolved to prioritize and hold on to negative experiences.
Because it keeps us safe.
Right. Remembering the location of the tiger in the bushes kept us alive. Remembering a beautiful sunset, well, that did not.
Makes sense.
So when you experience a massive setback, the brain's executive function gets completely hijacked by that negativity bias.
It just takes over.
It takes over, and it projects the current pain infinitely into the future. It literally tells you this is the new reality forever.
You know, it's like looking at an Olympic athlete's workout to understand basic fitness.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, we aren't all training for the Olympics.
No, thankfully.
And you probably aren't dodging sharks in your daily life.
Right.
But the mechanics of building the muscle, or in this case, emotional resilience, are exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
To a student, A sudden, terrible grade or a major falling out with a friend feels like a shark attack to their whole world in that moment.
It absolutely does.
So the very first step, before you can do any heavy lifting, is stopping that emotional bleeding. You have to consciously recognize that the negativity bias is just lying to you.
Precisely. Resilience begins the microsecond. You reject that permanence.
You have to say, this isn't forever.
Yes. It is the conscious acknowledgement that the setback is an event, not a destination.
I love that. An event, not a destination.
But, recognizing that is only the triage phase.
Right.
It stabilizes the patient, but it doesn't get them walking again.
Yeah, just acknowledging my life isn't over doesn't automatically teach you how to stand back up.
Exactly.
And this is where the mechanics of the rebuild get really granular in the source document. Because confidence doesn't just magically snap back into place after a trauma.
Not at all. It is a slow process of accumulation.
Right. Bethany Hamilton had to physically and mentally relearn her entire sport. She had to adapt her techniques step by agonizing step.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, what we're really talking about is overcoming cognitive overload.
Okay, write that down for me.
Well, when you experience a massive failure, the gap between where you currently are and your ultimate goal, say, winning a championship or getting accepted into a top university.
It just seems impossibly vast.
Exactly. The brain looks at that massive gap and essentially freezes.
Like a deer in headlights.
Literally. The cortisol flooding your system shuts down the problem-solving centers.
Wow.
But by shifting your focus entirely away from the macro outcome and narrowing your vision to just immediate, highly controllable steps.
You bypass that panic response.
You do.
Yeah.
You give your brain a computational task it can actually process.
See, here's where it gets really interesting, but honestly kind of frustrating.
How so?
Well, setting small achievable goals is the classic self-help advice, right?
Sure, it's everywhere.
It sounds fantastic on paper. But when you are completely overwhelmed by a massive personal disappointment...
You can't even see the small steps.
Exactly. How do you even figure out what that first small step should be without feeling like it's totally insignificant?
It's tough.
Like, if I need to rebuild my entire academic standing, celebrating the fact that I just organized my desk feels a bit, I don't know, silly.
Yeah.
It feels like applying a Band-Aid to a bullet wound.
I get that.
Yeah.
It might feel silly to the conscious mind, but neurologically, it is a profound biohack.
Wait, really? Organizing a desk?
Yes. What you are doing is manufacturing momentum.
Okay.
When you are paralyzed by a setback, your agency is at absolute zero. An object at rest stays at rest.
Right, basic physics.
But by accomplishing a tiny, seemingly insignificant goal like organizing that desk or simply reading one single page of a textbook, you are actually triggering a microdose of dopamine in the brain's reward pathway.
Wait, so you aren't organizing the desk to fix the grade at all?
Not at all. You are organizing the desk to prove to your brain that you can still effectively manipulate your environment.
Oh, wow.
Because dopamine is the molecule of motivation. And we often get the equation backward,
We think we need to feel motivated to take action.
Exactly. But in reality, motivation rarely precedes action. Action generates the dopamine, which then generates the motivation to take the next action.
So that tiny step is what breaks the chemical paralysis.
It jumpstarts the engine.
Okay, that completely flips the script.
Wow.
You're jumpstarting the engine so you can fix the problem later.
Yes.
You focus intensely on what you can control, like your immediate environment, your reaction to a mistake, your stress management, and you just let the macro outcome fade into the background.
Exactly. And that slow, sometimes painful process of relearning how to operate leads to what I think is, honestly, the most surprising takeaway from this entire deep dive.
Oh, you mean the concept of the unintended upgrade?
Yes. The unintended upgrade.
Because Bethany Hamilton didn't just learn to surf exactly the way she used to, minus an arm.
No, she couldn't.
That was literally governed by the laws of physics. It was
Yeah.
impossible. The balance of the board, the paddling technique, the weight distribution, it all had to change.
She had to completely adjust her approach and discover entirely new ways of performing.
Right. And when we map that to the boarding school environment, or to any of us facing a setback, the necessity of struggling through a new method actually makes you better than you were before the failure.
Because you are forced out of your default setting.
Exactly. So what does this all mean? It's like having the main highway blocked on your daily commute.
Oh, I like this.
It's incredibly frustrating, right? And you're forced to take the back roads.
Yeah, you have no choice.
But because of that forced detour, you end up discovering a much faster route. Or maybe a really cool neighborhood you never knew existed.
The adaptation actually becomes an upgrade.
Yes.
And this is a vital distinction in the psychology of resilience. We often mistakenly view resilience as just bouncing back.
Like a rubber band.
Right. We think it's about rewinding the clock to exactly who you were before the bad thing happened.
But it's not.
No, true adaptation isn't a return to the baseline. It means evolving into a more capable, more nuanced version of yourself precisely because you were forced out of your comfort zone.
So the friction is the point.
The friction is absolutely the point. We see this psychological adaptation in students who face early adversity.
Like what?
Well, think about a student who sails through early academics without ever really trying. They never learn how to study.
Right, they just get A's naturally.
Exactly. So when they hit a wall later, say, in college, they shatter.
Because they don't have the tools.
Right. But the student who struggles early, who fails and has to actively explore alternative study techniques, they are building cognitive density.
It's like building the muscle.
Exactly. They might discover unexpected leadership qualities by empathizing with others who are struggling. They develop a level of independence and problem solving they simply did not possess before the setback.
But, and I have to ask this, there is a limit to how much dopamine you can manufacture on your own, right?
Oh, definitely.
When your internal battery is completely drained by that friction, you can't just power through indefinitely all by yourself.
No, you'll burn out.
Which brings us to a crucial piece of this puzzle from the source text. The external framework.
The ecosystem.
Exactly. The document is very explicit that Hamilton's incredible journey wasn't a solo mission.
No.
She relied heavily on an ecosystem of support from her family, friends, and mentors. And it draws a direct parallel to boarding houses, describing them as ready-made communities designed to help individuals navigate adversity.
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of emotional co-regulation.
Co-regulation, what does that mean?
Well, resilience is fundamentally a team sport, but I don't just mean that in a motivational cheerleading sense.
Okay.
Biologically, when a person's nervous system is severely dysregulated by a setback, being in close physical and emotional proximity to a regulated nervous system actually helps synchronize and calm their own.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Just being near someone who is calm calms you down?
Yes, that is the biological basis of empathy.
That is wild.
Okay.
Because we get this so wrong in popular culture.
Oh, completely.
We romanticize resilience as this gritty lone wolf trait. You picture the solitary hero standing alone against the storm, gritting their teeth, overcoming the odds without anyone's help.
The whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps myth.
Exactly. But if the biology actually requires co-regulation, then isolation isn't strength.
Not at all. We constantly confuse isolation with independence.
Wow.
True resilience requires an enormous expenditure of cognitive and emotional resources. When you are depleted by a setback, maintaining hypervigilance and trying to adapt all alone, it drains your remaining fuel exponentially faster.
So a community acts as an external battery pack.
That's a perfect way to describe it. The dual nature of this ecosystem is that you have to actively build the battery pack before you need to plug into it.
Right. The document lists specific behaviors for these students to do just that, offering encouragement to peers, listening without judgment, actively including others in activities.
You are contributing to the grid.
Which raises an interesting question. We often wonder, does relying on a community make you more resilient, or does being resilient allow you the vulnerability to lean on a community?
It is entirely a symbiotic loop.
How so?
Being vulnerable enough to say, I am struggling, my methods are failing, and I need help, requires overriding the ego's defense mechanisms.
Which is hard.
Very hard. That is a highly resilient act in itself. It is the ultimate rejection of that negative permanence we discussed at the beginning.
Because asking for help implies a belief that things can actually improve.
Exactly. And on the flip side, when you listen without judgment or offer empathy to a peer, you are strengthening the social fabric that will eventually catch you when your own inevitable setback occurs.
So it's a constant exchange of energy.
It really is. Strong communities help individuals recover, but resilient individuals are what make a community strong in the first place.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Let's synthesize it.
Yeah, let's look at the core journey here. It starts with the shock of adversity, the moment the shark hits, or the moment the project fails.
And the negativity bias screams that this is permanent.
Right, and your first move is to reject that lie. Then you initiate a gradual rebuild by microdosing dopamine. You rely on tiny, controllable steps to break the cognitive paralysis.
Like organizing the desk.
Exactly.
Right.
And through that painfully slow process of relearning, you are forced to adapt, which unlocks unexpected new strengths. The upgrade.
The upgrade.
And sustaining this entire architecture is your community, the external battery pack that co-regulates your nervous system and that you, in turn, help sustain.
It is a complete blueprint for recovery. And the beauty of extracting this from such a specific source is that the scale of the trauma changes, but the biological and psychological mechanics remain identical.
So it scales up or down.
Exactly. The skills you learn negotiating a failed exam with the help of your boarding house peers, those are the exact same skills you will use negotiating a catastrophic product launch with your corporate team 20 years later.
So you don't have to be dodging sharks to use this playbook.
Not at all.
Whether you are prepping for a massive boardroom presentation, navigating a scary career shift, dealing with a rough patch in a relationship, or just trying to handle the everyday hurdles of life, these are fundamental tools for the human condition.
Because the human brain processes the challenge of a new environment or a personal failure using the same evolutionary pathways it uses for physical survival.
It's all connected.
It is. Learning to manually override the panic, to systematically generate momentum, and to utilize social co-regulation, these aren't just tricks. They are the literal instructions for operating your nervous system.
Which leaves us with one final kind of wild thought to chew on.
Oh.
Yeah, at the very end of the source material, there's a passing line that says, boarding life offers daily opportunities to practice resilience.
Okay.
It frames the close quarters, high-pressure environment not just as a challenge, but as a deliberate training ground.
Treating the environment as a gymnasium for the mind.
Right. And if resilience is essentially a muscle that requires the friction of adversity to grow, what happens if we don't just wait around for the bad things to happen? What if we actively seek out micro-adversities?
Wow. That is a highly provocative concept. Voluntarily inducing the stress response when there is no actual threat.
Exactly. Instead of just waiting for the universe to hand us a massive, uncontrollable setback, what if we intentionally place ourselves in situations where we are absolutely guaranteed to struggle?
Give me an example.
Like signing up for a complex pottery class when you have zero artistic ability, or volunteering to give a public speech when you are terrified of crowds, or trying to learn a new language and forcing yourself to speak it with locals.
So intentionally being terrible at something.
Yes. Intentionally being terrible, just to practice the mechanics of failing, managing the cortisol spike, and adapting.
You are suggesting that by exposing ourselves to manageable, controlled failures, we build up an emotional immune system.
Exactly.
So when the real, uncontrollable, high-stakes setbacks occur, the neurological pathways for recovery, the dopamine generation, the ego suppression, the adaptation, they are already primed and familiar.
They're ready to go.
It is psychological inoculation.
Psychological inoculation. I love that. You are giving yourself a weakened strain of the virus so your body knows exactly how to fight off the real thing.
That's brilliant.
So what is your microadversity going to be this week? Think about it. Go find something to be terrible at.
I might just have to do that myself.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Whether you are facing a terrifying wave or just a really intimidating Tuesday, remember that the setback is never the end of the story. It's just the friction you need to build a stronger bone. Take care, and we'll catch you next time.